What's up everybody, Tromming Gaming here. So it's been quite a while, my bad for that, but I'll be back with new videos starting today. And one of the really highly requested videos still remains to be my Batman Arkham Knight review, so that's what I want to talk about today. Of course, I have to start off this review saying to you all, I had never played a Batman game before, and it is not necessarily that I didn't know that they were not like great games, because I was very aware of that. Just that in general, I'm not the biggest fan of superheroes myself, and back in the days when those games came out, so many other great games came out at the same time that I just never really was inclined to get those games, right? And so with Batman Arkham Knight now coming out in June, yeah, I mean, I very much told myself already in advance, like, okay, this is the time I'm getting it. You know, this time around I'm finally getting into the Batman series, and man, I can definitely say that Arkham Knight was everything that I hoped it would be, pretty much. I just think in general it's a super solid open world game that I enjoyed way more, even though I actually thought I was getting quite tired of the whole open world formula, because so many games right now seem to be of that genre. Batman was kind of a breath of fresh air for me personally, and yeah, that is also why, you know, I'm thinking now, how should I start off this review? Do I talk about the story first like I usually do? And that's the thing, like, you know, the story is a pretty big part of the game, and I thought Batman Arkham Knight tackled it quite well. The story was quite good for an open world game in itself, but I myself, because I hadn't played the previous games, could not simply enjoy it too much, and therefore it wasn't the reason I personally played it. What does stand out for me personally in the story, and I don't want to get into spoilers either with this review, but a certain character definitely kind of like steals the show, and it's the little things, it's the dialogue and those kinds of things that just made this experience so much better in terms of the story department to me personally. Once again, not gonna go into spoilers here. There's a certain character that's just very funny, and yeah, I can say, like, it's definitely what still made this a very entertaining ride for me personally, having not played the previous Batman game. So what stands out the most for me in Batman Arkham Knight, what I want to spend the most time towards talking about, is simply the presentation. The game looks absolutely gorgeous. I was blown away by simply the graphics on the PS4, stuff like, you know, it's always raining in Gotham, you see the rain textures on Batman's, you know, like suit and stuff. Man, it looks mind-blowing. Just going into, for example, your Batmobile, racing around, seeing all the explosions happening in the background. You can see it for yourself in this video, but it looks absolutely gorgeous, and it's hands down, you know, one of the best looking games on the PS4. But it was not just that, it was also stuff like how much detail they put into literally everything about this game. Not just the main missions, also the side missions. Every single side mission seemed to have at least some cutscenes. There was this certain quest, for example, right? I was just flying around in Gotham. All of a sudden this beast pops up. I kind of like experience a jump scare pretty much, and it starts a new side quest. So I decide to dive into this particular side quest. I find out about the creature, that he was first a human and lived in this certain house which I visit, and all of a sudden there's this screen with like, it turned out to be some kind of doctor or whatever, and you see his experiments. He's keeping track of it in this like video diary, and it's playing in the house itself. When, you know, that was like a 2-minute video that they made specifically for that one part you visit that house, and I never returned to it anymore. And I just realized, like, wow, the amount of detail they have put into the small things, the areas you visit only once for a couple of seconds, you know, like, it's pretty insane. I don't think I've really seen that sort of detail in open world games before, really. You know, then there's also things like, for example, you have side quests which are pretty standard, you know, just destroy a certain command center or take down a particular army of thugs, and then you have to find out who the captain is and you destroy its walkie-talkie, as simple as that. But for that there are multiple different animations. It's not the same thing all the time. The dialogue for random soldiers that you encounter just changes depending on which mission you just played, right? They talk about previous events all the time, and I'm just like, the sheer amount of detail that went into making this a different experience all the time after just a small thing you've done, like that's what was so great about it. And therefore I really compared it to, for example, Infamous Second Son, where I felt like, yeah, the story was cool, and, you know, the first 8 hours playing it through, I had fun doing so, don't get me wrong there, but at the same time I'm like, you know, when I finally got through that and I was doing all the side missions, there were only about 5 types of them, and I was literally doing the same thing all the time, just in different environments. You know, everything felt the same about it. The animations, what you're doing, it was just rinse and repeat until you're finally done, and then, you know, you freed the whole city. Here, I felt like there was just much more variety in the side quests, ultimately, you know, meaning I had way more fun playing it. And also, you know, in terms of the presentation, like just the whole cinematic experience that they made out of an open world game. Batman flying around in Gotham, which first of all feels really great. All of a sudden, you know, you're just flying above a road and you can decide to press the L1 button, a marker gets placed on the road and the Batmobile appears, you know, in the distance, and all of a sudden Batman sort of like flies into it, right into it, the camera angles, that kind of stuff. Like, it looks so great, and at any single point you feel like you still are in control, and that's what's so great about it. And ultimately, I'd say the presentation is what seriously just blew me away the most in this particular game. So the gameplay, of course, still feels really good. It's pretty much what you can expect from, you know, the previous Batman games. There's a free roaming part, just flying around in Gotham using your grappling hook. Like, yeah, feels great. The combat, it's this combat system that I've already been very used to with games like Assassin's Creed and Shadow of Mordor. Batman just kind of like adds a new level to it. I do have to personally say, having played it now for like 30 hours, I thought it was maybe a bit too complicated. You know, I don't want to sound negative about it because that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there were so many things that you could do in the free-flowing combat system that at some points I was just confused and didn't really know what to do anymore. And, you know, maybe another thing to kind of like compare it to Shadow of Mordor, like, yeah, this combat system might be slightly better, but at the same time, what I liked so much about Shadow of Mordor myself was that it felt really brutal and satisfying because you could actually like behead orcs. In this game, Batman doesn't, like, you know, theoretically kill people. He only uses his fists, and therefore the sort of like impact is a little less satisfying, you know, compared to that particular game. But yeah, still, it's a great combat system that I've really enjoyed at the same time. And the biggest new addition to this one is the Batmobile, which at the same time is a little bit of a flaw to the game because it is not really needed. You know, you just use the normal version of the Batmobile for navigating around the areas and just driving through it. But at the same time, you know, you're not really inclined to use that in the game itself because you might as well just fly above the city, which is way faster in itself. You know, there are some like race puzzles, for example, where you kind of like have to be as fast as possible going through a certain track, split-second reactions towards having to activate certain things to like get through these obstacles, which is great. But then the Batmobile also has the tank mode, which I thought, you know, it just meant more variety, but there were way too many tank battles in this game and they lasted way too long at the same time. There's not really much to them. You have L2 to kind of like just shoot constant bullets, R2 for a sort of missile thing, and that's basically it. Like, the game doesn't really change things up there when there are way too many of those kinds of battles where you're just evading enemy tank bullets and stuff while you're shooting at them, and you are pretty much doing that for hours through the game, meaning it's literally the same thing over and over, which I would definitely say is pretty much the biggest flaw of the game, is simply repetitiveness, particularly in that section. And then they also introduced some things where you literally have to go in like stealth mode and chase other tanks because you can only sort of like destroy them if you like go after them, stand behind them for about 10 seconds, lock onto them, and then you can finally shoot. And hey, if you miss, they're coming after you and it's pretty much impossible to escape. Which, you know, those were the slight things for me that stood out as being the negative parts of the game. But hey, you know, it didn't ruin my experience or something too much. It was just something I definitely noticed there. Finally, we get to the value. I think Batman, you know, it just offers you about 30 to 40 hours of total content, right? If you want to get the Platinum, for example, it's going to take you probably a little longer than that. There's a lot of side missions with a great deal of variety here compared to so many other open world games, which I already talked about for a little bit in the, you know, in a previous part of this review. Yeah, you know, there's the main mission which takes maybe like 10 hours. Then there's the AR missions which you can do, which are sort of like standalone challenges and stuff for you to do depending on the combat, on the racing, those kinds of things. Riddler trophies, which are just collectibles scattered all over the map. Yeah, in itself, what can I say? Let's just conclude this review. I thought Batman Arkham Knight was a really solid game, just with very satisfying gameplay, very fun to play, a lot of variety to it. The story was good if you are into that, which was the problem for me personally. I'm not too much into the Batman lore myself. But yeah, I had a great time playing it, and I think if you own a PS4 or an Xbox One, not a PC yet, unfortunately, like that version will come later down the road, but yeah, get this game if you're looking for a great open world game, because Batman Arkham Knight is precisely that. So my personal score for Batman Arkham Knight is a 9 out of 10. Thanks a lot for watching.